I mean, imagine finding out that every piece of advice you have ever taken from, like your parents, your doctors, even the leaders of your country, came from someone who is fundamentally, biologically incapable of telling you the objective truth.
Right. It is a profoundly unsettling thought, honestly.
It really is. Think about the people who hand you the map to life. You just assume they know how to read it. But what if your trusted guide is actually completely lost, navigating blind, and by following them, you are basically walking yourself straight off a cliff?
Yeah, we build our entire society on this assumption of reliable authority.
Mm.
We trust titles, we trust experience, we trust the people who just seem confident.
Exactly.
Stripping all that away leaves us in a very vulnerable place.
Which brings us to the mission for this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking a single, deeply provocative philosophical text dated September 9, 2025.
It is quite a read.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is by an author named Xu Feng, and it's titled, Better to Listen to Heaven Than to Human Boasting.
I love that title.
Right. So our goal today is to put this radical exercise in skepticism under the microscope. We are not here to endorse this worldview, and we aren't here to debunk it either.
We're just looking at the arguments.
Exactly. We are going to impartially explore how this text challenges the very foundation of why you, the listener, believe anyone about anything. And perhaps more importantly, we're going to look at the highly surprising alternative it offers for where we should actually place our trust.
In an era of constant information overload, where everyone from influencers to politicians claims to have the ultimate truth, this material acts as a massive reset button.
A total reset.
Yeah, because Schreck doesn't just suggest we question our leaders. He starts by attacking the baseline biological and existential reality of just being human.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does he mean by the baseline reality?
Well, he makes the brutal point that humans are inherently imperfect from the jump. We possess inevitable flaws and limitations.
So we are just flawed hard.
Right, which means it is literally impossible to guarantee the truth of our words. He points to something he calls the existential void.
The existential void, that sounds intense.
It is. The text argues that if a person cannot clearly answer three fundamental questions, where did I come from, what am I doing here, and where am I going, then they fundamentally cannot be trusted.
Wow. So if you don't have the answers to the universe, you're out.
Basically. And he did not mince his words. He says trusting an existentially lost person will lead you straight into the sewer.
The sewer.
Yeah, because they cannot bear the responsibility for those consequences.
Okay, but I have to push back on this immediately. I mean, it is like following a malfunctioning GPS driven by a blindfolded driver. I get why you wouldn't want life advice from them.
Right, it's a great analogy.
But I just want my accountant to do my taxes correctly, or my dentist to fix a cavity. I don't need them to know the ultimate cosmic origins of their soul.
That is a very fair point.
If we discount everyone who hasn't solved the mysteries of the universe, aren't we basically left trusting absolutely no one? Isn't that just a completely paralyzing way for you to go through daily life?
It sounds paralyzing, yeah. But Xu Feng is intentionally pushing us to the extreme to highlight how fragile human authority actually is.
So it's a thought experiment almost.
In a way. He wants you to feel that paralysis for a moment, to just shatter your baseline complacency. Think about the overarching direction of your life, not just your dental work.
Okay, sure.
If someone is guiding your moral compass, or your political beliefs, or your worldview, but they cannot answer those three existential questions, their foundation is built on sand.
I see.
How could they possibly answer for where you end up if they have no idea what the ultimate destination even is?
So they're essentially just guessing. And taking their advice means you are outsourcing your own journey to someone who is just as lost as you are.
Which is compounded by his next point about the internal mechanisms of human biology.
Oh, right, the 18 factors.
Yes. The text introduces his concept of the 18 factors. Shuang claims that human beings have 18 internal factors that are completely beyond their control.
Now, he doesn't list all 18 out for us in this specific excerpt, but if we hypothesize based on his premise, the implications are honestly staggering.
They really are.
We are talking about the underlying hardware of human consciousness. Things like our neurochemistry, the genetics we inherited, our innate fight-or-flight responses.
Or the subconscious biases drilled into us during childhood.
Exactly, or even the limitations of the language we happen to speak.
When you look at those factors, you realize we were running on an operating system we did not code and do not have admin access to.
I love that. We don't have the admin password to our own brains.
Right. So if someone's worldview is heavily dictated by, say, a hyperactive amygdala that makes them perceive threats everywhere, or by a cultural dogma they absorbed before the age of 5, how much of their truth is actually objective?
Probably very little.
Swiffing is arguing that humans aren't even fully masters of themselves. In many situations, what people say and do isn't entirely of their own conscious choosing. It is a biological or circumstantial accident.
Here is where it gets really interesting, though. Because if our internal hardware is that compromised, stepping out into the world only makes it worse.
Oh, absolutely. The environment adds a whole new layer.
Yeah, the text moves from our internal flaws to how external pressures actively warp anything a person says. And the primary mechanism for this corruption is vested interests.
Everyone has territory to protect. The text argues that humans are always defending something.
Like what?
It could be their country, their family, their ideals, or just their personal reputation. Because every single person has these interests at stake, their words become tools designed to defend that territory.
So it's not about the truth anymore.
Exactly. They are no longer instruments of truth. They are instruments of self-preservation.
Let's break down the mechanics of how that actually plays out with supposedly objective experts. Like, imagine a renowned university professor whose entire 30-year career rests on one specific theory.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If a new set of data emerges that completely disproves their life's work, their vested interest, their reputation, their tenure, their legacy, creates immense pressure.
The temptation to dismiss the new data would be huge.
Right. The temptation to subtly tweak their interpretation to protect their intellectual territory is overwhelming. And they might not even realize they are doing it. It is like actors on a stage, where the script isn't reality, but rather a set of hidden motives written by their desires and fears.
That is the insidious nature of what the text calls mutability. People change based on the pressures applied to them.
Mutability. Yeah.
Money, status, beauty, power, the environment. These variables constantly shift who a person is from one day to the next. You cannot guarantee that the person you are listening to today will be the same person tomorrow because their environment will be different.
And that mutability leads Shuofeng to make one of the most ruthless claims in the entire text. He says, every person has a price.
It is a bold statement.
Very bold. He claims that a human soul can be bought with temptations like wealth, authority, or territory. The text talks about the mask, how people are capable of disguise. Our outward emotions and the words we speak often completely contradict our true, hidden intentions.
We all wear masks to some degree.
But listening to this, I find myself wrestling with the deep cynicism of his view, saying that every single person has a price and will sell their soul for enough territory or beauty. Is the author just ignoring human altruism, or is this just the ultimate form of realism?
What is fascinating here is that framing it as cynicism might actually be missing the analytical core of his argument.
Oh, really? How so?
Think of it as identifying a fluctuating variable in a mathematical equation. If a person's behavior and stated truths shift when you introduce a large sum of money or the threat of losing their job, then their truth is highly subjective. It is pliable.
Ah, pliable truth. That makes sense.
Swiffing is pointing out that pliability is the absolute enemy of objective truth. If a structural engineer tells you a bridge is safe, but you know their boss threatened to fire them if they said otherwise, you suddenly recognize the pliability of their statement.
Yeah, you can no longer trust the words coming out of their mouth.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the people we actively seek out for guidance in society? I mean, if everyday people are flawed and corruptible, what about the great minds, the leaders, the visionaries?
The author systematically tears down the entire illusion of human authority, and he uses this brilliant visual metaphor to do it. He describes human knowledge and cognition as a circle.
Right, the circle of knowledge.
He argues that the only difference between humans is the size of their circle. Everything outside that boundary is the great unknown.
I picture it like walking through a pitch-black forest at midnight, holding a flashlight. A billionaire, a university professor, a celebrated master. They might have a slightly wider beam of light than you do.
They can see 10 feet ahead instead of 5.
Exactly. But they are still surrounded by the exact same infinite, crushing darkness that you are. Their circle of knowledge is just a tiny speck in the grand scheme of the unknown.
Relying solely on what others say simply keeps you trapped within the boundaries of their limited circle. You aren't actually exploring the darkness yourself.
You are just pacing back and forth inside their flashlight beam,
confined by their specific blind spots and their specific vested interests.
The text explicitly dismantles societal titles to drive this home. Emperors, presidents, chairpersons, professors, experts, masters, billionaires, celebrities. Su Feng warns us to remember that they are all merely human beings.
Just humans with slightly bigger circles.
But I want to hold my ground on this point for a second. If I am in that dark forest and I am listening to an expert say, like you, my expert co-host isn't moving around in your larger circle, still objectively better than staying in my smaller one.
It is a natural assumption to make.
A bigger flashlight helps me avoid tripping over a root in the dark. Why wouldn't I take advantage of your wider beam?
This raises an important question, but the text's core warning answers it. Borrowing someone else's circle doesn't make you enlightened. It makes you dependent.
Dependent?
Yes. It warns you against swapping genuine understanding for blind worship of titles. If you just trust the professor because they have a PhD or the billionaire because they have money, you are outsourcing your understanding of reality to someone who is just as biologically flawed, existentially lost, and potentially corruptible as you are.
So the bigger flashlight is useless.
It is entirely useless and actually quite dangerous if the person holding it is actively walking you off a cliff to protect their own territory. You stop watching your own feet because you assume they know where they're going.
That is terrifying. By deferring to the title, you completely shut down your own critical observation.
You do.
So, having thoroughly demolished human credibility, leaving absolutely no one on Earth left to trust, the author has to provide an alternative. If we cannot listen to human boasting, where on earth do we turn?
His solution is right there in the title of the text. Listen to heaven.
Listen to heaven. How does he actually define that, though?
Well, it takes a very unexpected turn. He advises reading the wordless heavenly book.
The wordless heavenly book. Okay.
And listening to the teachings of Buddhas, deities, celestials, and sages.
Which initially sounds incredibly mystical. It sounds like he is just swapping out secular human experts for religious authority figures.
It does sound like that at first glance.
But then, in the very next breath, he makes this aggressive pivot to hard science. He explicitly instructs the reader to observe facts, seek the truth, and study mathematics, physics, and chemistry.
Quite a pivot.
Wait, really? Buddhas and deities right next to math, physics, and chemistry. How do mystic sages and high school chemistry class fit into the exact same category of heaven?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a fascinating synthesis. In Su Feng's worldview, heaven does not function as a traditional religious concept. It represents objective, immutable, universal truth.
Okay, immutable truth.
Let's look at the mechanics of why he groups them together. The laws of physics and the principles of mathematics do not have vested interests. They do not have reputations to defend.
Oh, wow. Yeah, gravity doesn't care if you are a peasant or an emperor. It applies equally. It doesn't wear a mask.
Thermodynamics doesn't change its mind based on who is president or how much money you offer it. 2 + 2 = 4, entirely independent of environmental pressures or societal trends.
You cannot bribe the laws of nature.
Exactly. This is what he means by the wordless book. The natural, observable laws of the universe are the ultimate contrast to human boasting.
So grouping the teachings of sages with chemistry is his way of telling you to look for the fundamental, unchanging mechanics that govern reality, rather than listening to the shifting opinions of flawed humans.
Right. A scientist conducting a chemical experiment isn't listening to human boasting. They are asking the universe a direct question and watching how the universe responds.
The chemical reaction itself is the wordless truth.
That process of direct observation is exactly what he is advocating. Remove the human interpreter. Stop asking the person with the flashlight what they see and start studying the nature of the light itself.
That is brilliant. Which brings us to the conclusion of the text and this amazing meta-twist. After spending the entire essay systematically warning you, the listener, absolutely not to trust humans, the author sets up a paradoxical trap.
It is a genius move.
He suddenly asks, now you may ask, who is saying all of this?
Then he answers his own question. Of course I am.
Of course I am. And then he leaves the reader with a final, lingering riddle. Is the author a human? A ghost? A Buddha? A demon?
And he says, you decide for yourself.
You decide for yourself. Think about the philosophical knot he just tied you in. If he had ended the text by saying, I am a great master who has figured out the flaws of humanity, therefore you must listen to my words, he would have violated his entire thesis.
He would have become just another human boasting, demanding that you step into his circle of knowledge.
He absolutely refuses to become the very expert or master he just spent the whole text warning you about.
Which is why this is the ultimate aha moment for you, the listener.
Yeah.
By ending with, you decide for yourself, he forces you to practice the exact critical thinking he just preached.
Wow.
He takes all the responsibility he systematically stripped away from human authorities and throws it directly onto your shoulders. You have to evaluate the logic of the text without relying on the authority of the author.
It is the ultimate test of whether you actually understood the message. And it leaves us with something really profound to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, if we accept Schweffing's premise that human knowledge is just a circle, then reading this very text means you are currently sitting inside his circle. You are reading human words.
That is very true.
So, if math and physics are the wordless truths of the universe, perhaps true enlightenment isn't found in reading any text, even this one. Perhaps it is found in closing the book entirely, stepping away from the voices of others, and simply observing the mechanics of the world around you for yourself.